Welcome to Kim Talks Resilience, where we share stories of insight and inspiration in life, love, and business with resilient women from around the world. Speaking with authors, entrepreneurs, founders, and coaches to learn their strategies for a more resilient life so we can all build the life we love. I'm your host, Kim Hayden. All righty. Welcome. Super excited to be here today. I guess if you are listening to lots of these podcasts, I'm excited to be here every time. But today we have a fellow Calgarian. She's sitting in the snowdrift with me, although we're starting to melt here, so it's starting to look pretty good. So it's going to be interesting to get her perspective on things. So stick tight because this is a real conversation we need to have because coming out of COVID, our divorce rates are off the charts. People are running in a dysregulated state. And having a voice of authority, somebody who can step in and say, whoa, you don't have to leave a legacy of despair. You don't have to be angry. Let's get through this and let's get through it together. So Zeina El-Sayed has a degree in justice studies and a dual certificates in meditation and negotiation. Zeina is currently taking the Relationship Systems Intelligence, that's ORSC, training. Zeina worked as a Divorce Department Supervisor as a Court of Queen's Bench for 10 years and has been a mediator for 22. Zeina started Trusted Divorce Service, TDS, in 2016 after seeing so many couples go through the long, painful, and yes, expensive divorce routes, the black hole of divorce. TDS, Trusted Divorce Services, has since helped hundreds of ex-couples divorce constructively, settle their finances fairly, and co-parent emotionally healthy children. I think this is such an incredible conversation we're going to have today. Welcome to the show, Zeina.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
You made it through the last cold snap.
Yeah, I think we're done for the year. I think we're good. This sun has been amazing.
Don't jinx it on me. Don't jinx it
No,
on
no,
me.
no, no, no. No,
I
we're
am
good.
so ready. I'm so ready for summer. I can't even tell you.
Yes.
I think COVID compounded the cold. I think COVID
Mhm.
actually had a compound effect on how cold it felt because a lot
Yeah.
of us have been stuck here in the cold, haven't had those vacations for
Mhm.
4 and 5 years now. So, along with compounding or exacerbating so many other things like we saw through the demise of the marriages and such. It was a real strain. Before we dive into what you do, I'd love for you to share with us, give us a bit of who is Zeina?
I am originally Lebanese. I come from Lebanon. We moved to Canada when I turned around 17. I think I was 17, 18. It's so when you move countries, it's like everything feels like it's all it gets like pushed together and you lose track of like exactly what's going on. But we moved when I was 17, and I am a mom to 3 kids. I'm a wife. I live in Calgary. I'm a business owner, and I help people divorce amicably and constructively all day long.
So, but you're a wife. Have you ever been divorced, or is this something that you have experienced and been able to pull apart?
I have not been divorced.
That's actually probably a good thing because you don't have like an emotional bias.
I can connect with people on like the resiliency aspect and the, yeah, feeling like, um, you know feeling down, feeling like, what am I gonna do next? Like all these emotions that come with divorce. But yeah, I don't. It doesn't remind me of something I've been through. It reminds me of tough times that I've gone through with my husband, where we thought about divorce, but we didn't actually go through it. So there is a little bit of connection, but not divorce.
That's it's a good thing because we don't want a pilot flying us that's crashed. We just want to know how to avoid the crash. So,
Mm,
let's talk about what you do, because this is a highly charged topic. A lot of
mhm,
people I talk to men and women, and the men will go, "Oh, she took my house and I lost all my money." And women will say, "He was a narcissist and he controlled me." So these are kind of very common story bylines that I hear on a regular basis.
mhm.
Walk me through what you do and how maybe we can avoid those residual negative bylines.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that that happens often where things start to get heated between the spouses. Once they decide to divorce, now they bring other people into the mix. They start talking to their friends and sister, and everybody tries to, like, go on their side, and now there's a war between the two spouses. Um, and if they don't stop themselves, you're right, like it just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And at the end of the day,
Mm.
everybody loses, except the lawyers, because you want to fight it out. You go to court. You start like claiming all these things against one another, and it's like one court hearing after another, thousands of dollars each court hearing. Oh, let's try mediation now. Oh, that doesn't work. Let's go back to court. And 3 4 years later, you're $80,000, in the minus. And who won? What about the kids? Like it just becomes such this snowball of negativity and destruction.
And the reality is why are you leaving your children's legacy to a lawyer? That's just
Yeah.
my personal kind of opinion
Hmm.
on all that is, don't get me wrong, to all those lawyers out there, we still want you to have a viable living. We just think that I agree. There's a better way to do this. Um, I myself, most people don't know, and anybody who's listening to this will now know, got married when I was 18 in Kansas, had a baby at 20, and got divorced at 20.
Mm.
So, we had, and we didn't even have a house or wealth of money, but man, the fight over the car, and it got like knocked down. Just one step off the Kansas trailer park. So you can only imagine how it got. Walk me through. Can you share with me the flags somebody should be aware of
Hmm.
that they need to reach out to TDS? What are the flags? What are the signs?
Honestly, if you're able to step away from that, not even step away, but allow yourself to go through the emotions first, right? Like, be angry, be resentful, be all these things. Let it wash through your body. Honestly, is what I say, and then you will be able to clear your mind and think logically and realize that you actually don't want to do this to yourself, your ex, or your kids. And lots of people do that. Like, we hear so much about the negative divorces that people are surprised that we're such a big company, and that so many people go through our doors, is because a lot of people are good and are respectful and realize that they don't, it doesn't have to be this way. So anybody who, it doesn't matter how, like, and again, that's another misconception that I see so much, is if you have lots of money, you need a lawyer. And that's not true either, because we go through and we help resolve everything in mediation, even if you
Yep.
have businesses, even if you have like $1 million house, whatever it is. So if for someone to say, let me try TDS, is if they can commit to being fair to their ex, being respectful and honoring sort of the time that they were together, and making the best out of this, bad situation. And a lot of times when you're like that, the chances are your ex or your spouse is similar to you. Then going through TDS is the next step for you.
What's the timeline typically that we're seeing now? If you can mediate your way through all of this, right,
Hmm.
and not end up in court, because let's face the facts here. A lot of people going through divorce are angry.
Hmm.
They're angry at their parents for being divorced, so of course now I'm divorced. They're
Hmm.
angry at their spouse because they never listened or didn't want to go to counseling. They're angry at themselves. They're angry at the neighbor. They're angry at their best friends. They're angry at everybody.
Hmm.
And when we're in anger, it's very hard to find solutions. Anger does not align in our brain with
Hmm.
solution opportunities, unless it's
Hmm.
like robbing a bank and getting a ski mask.
Hmm.
Um, what is the average timeline people should be prepared to move through this? Not, what are we looking at?
So I see so many different timelines from clients. Some clients or prospects, I would say, they call and they're like, we stopped sharing a bedroom 2 weeks ago. We're ready for a divorce. And some clients will say, it's been 5 years and we're still struggling. So it's the person, it's the help that they're getting. What kind of help are they getting? Are they allowing themselves to actually process the pain and process the anger? Anger is not a bad thing, I don't think. I think,
No, it's
when you're,
fuel. It can be
yeah,
fuel to help you move
yes,
forward. It's just,
yes,
yeah, it's you can't allow it to, you can't make destructive decisions from it. You have to use it as fuel forward. Um,
exactly.
when they enter your program, when they sign on with TDS, what's
Mhm.
kind of that timeline look like? What does that intake look like? What does that initial, I guess, exploratory uh, kind of space
Mhm.
within when they come in? What does that look like?
Yeah, so first we collect their financial disclosure, just like, a lawyer would do, or just like they would do if they were doing the divorce themselves. And we get it from both of them. So instead of each of them submitting their financial disclosure to each of their lawyer, and then the lawyers will talk and send the disclosure to one another. They submit it to us. We actually share a shared folder with them, so both spouses have access to each other's disclosure. So it's full transparency. After the disclosure, we put all the numbers together. We figure out what the child support guideline is, if there's spousal support that's applicable. We do a calculation, we do the assets and liabilities chart. Then we meet with each of them separately and we talk about all these numbers. And I like these meetings because they get a chance to look at what potentially the division can be and what child support may be, without the other person sort of looking over through their shoulder, and they get a chance to really process the information. And I usually help them prepare for the following step, which is the joint mediation, where they both sit together with us and I help them come to an agreement on all these things. In the pre-mediation, we talk a lot about like, what do you want? What do you want to ask for? If they say this, what do you do? How are you going to deal with some emotional hardships? We prepare them, and I even give them homework between the pre-mediation and the joint mediation. And then joint mediation, usually they're booked for 3 hours at a time, and we make a list, we go through it, and moving forward is the focus. And then after that, we put all their agreements into proper court documents and we file it in court and they're done.
Wow. So it sounds as if it's more of a personal approach, also,
Hmm.
right?
I call it the humane way to divorce because honestly, it's like it's gentle and you're in control and you know what's going on with the other side. And we always talk to both of them at the same time, so there's no like hidden agenda or anything like that.
What's the most challenging that you've seen that you just said, "You know what? The flags are here. I'm going to adhere to them. This is not the right avenue for you." What does that
Yeah.
look like? Because there are some people that
Hmm.
I would think under there's no circumstance that they can actually come and collaborate on,
Mhm.
you know, this nullifying their marriage and bringing everything to closure. What are some
Mhm.
of those flags?
When someone doesn't believe the other person should get anything, like there's a lot of negotiation that happens in mediation. So you don't necessarily, you're not going to divide everything 50-50, but there's a lot of like, I'm really interested in keeping my pension. What about you get more of the house? Like there's a lot of that going on, and that's totally okay. But when someone sits there and goes, she did this to me, I don't think she should get anything. Or, 20 years later, when we first got married, I bought her a gift and she went and sold it. Now I want that money back. Like when you got that kind of an attitude, then it doesn't work.
Do you fire clients?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to, eh?
But honestly, they don't get to like, we are like our messaging and the information we put out, what kind of a company we are. So you don't get to the mediation part if you're that kind, like very rarely that somebody
Very
will get
rarely.
there. And I will call them on it. I'd be like, this is mediation. You agreed to this. You know what this that this is about negotiating. You know that we're not gonna, do this to one another. We're gonna keep the respect. And I will. It's a balancing act, because a lot of times the other side is like submissive, and they will accept because that's what they're used to, and I will try to empower them so that they feel like, no, they don't have to say yes. So there's a lot of, but very rarely it happens, because from the time that they contact us, we say, you have to be fair, transparency, and this is an amicable process. So people who are like that will not even go through.
They're not even gonna they're going, "Zaina, no, Zaina, can't do that."
Mhm.
Um, can you share with us like a story or of a client, not obviously not disclosing the client, but one of
Mhm.
those cases that is like such a huge success case and
Mhm.
why it's one that still sticks with you today?
Mhm. I have so many. Let me see which one I want to bring up. There were a couple who are like they're religious. Their religion does not allow divorce, but they just don't want to be with one another anymore. And they both work at the same workplace, and it's kind of belonging to the 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 religion that they follow. So the whole thing was super hard. They have two girls, and on one hand, they're kind of torn. They don't want to do this because it's against their religion. On the other hand, they don't want one another anymore. And then they're so scared that they're gonna end up with lawyer. They kind of. It's not about ending up with. It's not the lawyers that's the problem. It's the conflict and the courts and like the court hearings and all these things. So they did not want that, so they found us. They came, spoke to us, and they're like, this has to be confidential. Nobody needs to know. And they're actually having problems at their work, because people are starting to realize that they're not with one another anymore.
Yeah.
So they came. They both have big pensions that they were worried about, and it was hard. There was a lot of crying, and there was a lot of should we do this? Should we not do this? But as we're going through mediation, and because it's a gentle process, and because they're in control, and we were able to maneuver things in a way that works for them, like on their timeline, they're like, let's deal with the division of assets now and what to do with the girls, but we don't want to get the divorce because you can actually separate these things. And we're like, yeah, we don't have to file the divorce. Let's like deal with the assets, get you into two different houses, and the child support, so you can both be financially stable, and then think about the divorce later. And so that's what happened, and at the end of it, they're like, that like, that's it, that's all, what, because we got everything set up, we got the documents for them, they're on their own. And up to this date, they still meet every Saturday evening for dinner. The ex-husband goes over to the house, because the wife stayed in the house with the girls, and they have a Saturday dinner together. And then the husband goes home, and they're still respectful to one another, and they move through it in a humane way.
That is beautiful, and what a legacy to leave for those girls. Like,
Yeah.
what a legacy. Speaking of children, I have seen over the years, as a real estate agent, I have
Hmm.
seen over the years where people will, the children will stay in the primary property and the parents will move in and out
Hmm.
every other week.
Yeah.
Have you seen that? And how does something like that work as an alternative? And is it
So
just something that you do for a year while the children get used to they get stabilized out?
yeah, so as a mediator, I have to be neutral always. But when somebody says they want to do that, I'm like, are you sure? Like, because there are so many problems that come with it,
Yeah,
right? Like say the kids stay in the house, they're back and forth. I've had a couple of clients actually in the last 6 months or so that did that, and the husband works out of town, and so the wife said, when you come into town, you stay in the house. I go stay with my parents, and vice versa. But then later on they were complaining about, well, I come home and the house is messy. Or what about the house expenses? Like, how do we divide those? So they had to come up with a really detailed way to pay for things. Like, it's just so much headache, honestly. Like, it is an option, but it creates so much
yeah,
conflict. And even if you're amicable and everything, like, it just doesn't work. Imagine coming home and the house is messy and there's no food in the fridge, and you're used to your wife making food for you all the time, and now that's a whole other monster. You don't want to get there.
it's
So
prolonging the inevitable, I guess.
totally, yeah. And then you can't have a partner because of the shared
Yeah,
space. Like, it's just, I feel
it's
like
just
it can be painful. Like, some people don't mind it, and I don't know, like, some people have had to do that in the last while because of the house market, because they couldn't sell, right? Like,
yeah,
they couldn't get a, like, when one of them could not get a mortgage, the house prices were down, so they had to do stuff like that, but
get
it's not
creative.
sustainable. Hmm.
Yeah, get creative. Um, will you share time with us that, you're without a moment of resiliency in your life, we wouldn't be having this conversation?
Yeah, so I think two big two big, not events, but periods in my life where I felt like I'm lonely. I don't have support. I don't have community. I cannot count on anyone but myself to move through things. One was when I was probably, I would say 12, 13, and I did not have a lot of friends, and um, I wasn't sporty, and all the other kids were. So I always felt lonely, and I felt like I like to write, but my teachers did not really see that as a gift or as something that is special about me. So I never really felt special, or not even special, but valued or protected. And then things started to change, and I started making friends, and things were good, and I started to have a good time. And then I came to Canada, and it was a really, really tough time for me, because it's not just that I came in November when it's super cold and snow everywhere. I also felt lonely, like very lonely. I knew English, but not the spoken English. I knew the written and reading English, and I understood it well, but I never really conversed in English. During the time I was in Lebanon, and coming here, coming to a brand new everything. The school felt cold. The students around me were weird. I gravitated towards people from my own culture, but they did not really were not interested. I was a newbie, so they did not want to take me under their wing, so to speak. So all these experiences, and of course I was resilient. Of course I pushed through, and I went to college, and I got a degree, and I started working, and then I started to have friends, and now Canada is my home, and I wouldn't go anywhere else. um, but those experiences made me want to support others and be there for them and be that listening ear. Sometimes we have men in the office speaking to me one on one, and they open up and they're able to really be themselves and really be emotional. And I think they're able to do that because I allow space for it. And I do because I've been through times where nobody was there for me, and I want to make sure that I'm there for people and people are there for one another. So we're trying to build more communities around that as well.
Well, we seem to have another thing in common. I came to Canada in October,
Mm.
and yeah, it was cold. It was
Mm-hmm.
cold, and I was living in Las Vegas at the time that I ended up coming to Canada. Um, but I can't imagine coming to a new country as a teenager. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, our teen years, those, junior high and high school are hard enough as is.
Mm-hmm.
And if that experience alone doesn't build resiliency in a person,
Mm-hmm.
um, but it's interesting you bring up the word lonely.
Mm-hmm.
Are a lot of very lonely people in this very busy world.
Yes.
And I just want to put that out there,
Yeah.
folks. You're not alone. You're not alone. I promise you. Whatever you're feeling, experiencing, or going through, you are not alone. You are not alone. Um, let's go
Kim,
into yeah, go
if
ahead.
you don't mind, so we're setting up a program actually for men, and it's a you can call it support group, but it's basically men come together, they talk about what's going on. If they're feeling lonely, this is a place for them to find other men, to get to know them, to make friends. And it is led by a social worker who has worked with families and divorced men and people who have struggled for a long time. So I can send that information. I don't know what's the best way to do this, but
Yeah,
and a lot of people are lonely, and stats say that men are more lonely
yeah.
than any other category. So it is very important that they reach out and that they find other men and friends that they can talk to and that they can be open about things with.
And I think that's the key you just said right there, open. A lot of men are afraid of being judged.
Yeah.
And, women, we can cry, and that's our feminine side. Just
Mhm.
don't cry on stage if you're giving a talk, right? That's
Mhm.
I mean, we have all these mixed messages around being female. But yeah, the men's group and men the uh highest premature death in the United States, I don't know about Canada, but in the United States is suicide by men. So, and it's
Mm.
feeling that they're just trapped. And a lot of times that financial demise leads to domestic demise.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times divorce is a compounded issue that
Mhm.
if there wasn't a financial or childhood, child that's a challenge, right?
Mhm.
I got three of them.
Mhm.
But these things compound a dysfunction within a marriage. Let's go
Mhm.
into reading. What should
Mhm.
somebody be reading? What is a book that you would like all your clients to read?
The two books that I always recommend, and they're not specifically divorce related, but I read them and they just totally changed the way I thought of myself, the world, my abilities. And one is The Big Leap for
Mm,
Gay Hand. Have you read it?
yes, it's a
It's such a and
very
it's
good.
small, so if you're not a reader, like don't worry because you can finish it in no time.
It's
It's a
also on
very simple.
Audible book. It's also on
Yeah.
Audible, and so, you know what? Maybe look for something that is 90 minutes away from where you live that
Mm,
you haven't looked at before, and take a drive. Because in
mm.
that drive out there and that drive
Yeah.
back, you can listen
Yeah.
to the whole book in one go.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other one is Finding Your North Star,
Mm,
Martha Beck.
I haven't heard of that one.
It's
What's in
big. It's big.
That's why I
But it,
haven't heard of it.
and like the print is small, but it's a nice, like if you were to commit to, I'm gonna read a couple. It's not a hard read. It's a lot of things are gonna make so much sense to you. but it's long. But basically, the whole idea of this book is, what do you actually want? What makes you happy? Actually, there's that little voice in our head that knows exactly what we want, but we shut it down and we kind of like, we don't listen to it. And then that affects us in so many ways. There's so much potential for us to be happy and to do what our soul wants. I think she calls it soul, their little voice. And it gives you very tangible ways to listen to it and to start moving towards your North Star, which is, this is the best version of myself that I can be and that I want to aspire to become.
Those are great, great book offerings, and I think that when you're better centered, you make
Mm-hmm.
better decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
you got to get outside. I find that a lot of women uh, will complain to all of their friends, all of Facebook, do all of that,
Mm-hmm.
and then everything just seems to get compounded into more of the negative, right?
Yes.
And um, I would say that if you're going through this, I'm not saying hide it. I'm just saying being selective on how you present it, because
Mm-hmm.
you can't peel it back. If your mom decides that he is the most evil person on the face of this earth, the
Mm-hmm.
reality is even if you get to where you get through this and you realize maybe he isn't the most evil person, mom's never going to buy that. And it will
Yeah.
always color the language. So
Mm-hmm.
um, be gentle with yourself and anybody that impacts your children.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the most important thing. Where can people find you? What are your socials? Are you on Instagram?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So the website is trusteddivorceservices.ca. And we're on Instagram, Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram and Facebook handle, also TikTok. We're everywhere actually, and it's the same handle. And it's at Trusted Divorce.
Okay, awesome. Trusted Divorce, so it's not
Hmm.
services,
Yeah,
at
just
Trusted
Trusted
Divorce.
Divorce. Hmm.
Awesome, awesome. So I'd love for you to share with us a quote today and why
Hmm.
that quote's important to you.
So there's one that I love quotes, and I have so many of them, but the one that I chose for today is, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And so this goes hand in hand with the book recommendations that I gave to.
That is awesome. Awesome. Again, it's you have far more control than you think you do. Even when you feel like the
Hmm.
world is spinning out of control, I promise you have far more control. You
Hmm.
just got to get up, got to get up. You got to reach out to the right people and you just keep going. One foot in front of the other. I promise you
Hmm.
this, we all have tough days. Everybody does. I have
Hmm.
yet to interview a single person that has not had tough days. But the one thing they all have, folks, is they get up, they put their pants on, they pull up their big girl pants, and they just make it
Hmm.
happen. They just make it happen.
Hmm.
Any final words? Anything else that you'd like to share, Zaina? Anything that we missed?
No, I don't think so. I really want to thank you. It's been such a fun time to be with you, and I really appreciate you having me on the podcast. And regards to all your followers and the people that love you, I know now why they love you. And reach out if you need help, if you have questions. We offer 20-minute consults. It's all on our website.
Excellent. And we'll have all that information in the show notes. And you know what? That's it for today. I want to thank you so much for sharing your most valuable resource, your time. You know what? Until next time, be good to yourself. Thank you for joining us here today at Kim Talks Resilience. I'm your host, Kim Hayden, and I'd love to invite you to our resilient community at resilient resilientgift.com. That's resilientgift.com, and we'll send you our magazine and tickets for upcoming events and all sorts of cool things we do here. So be sure to keep watching, and you know what? Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share, because we all know that sharing is caring.